Hello there, everybody, and welcome to PA Politics Live. I am Jordan Roan, your host, and I thank you so much for tuning in today, whether or not you're watching this live on YouTube or if you are tuning in after the fact in the form of a podcast or just rewatching the tape. Thank you so very much. It's an honor to have you here and to be bringing you this brand new show right here on the internet. So what is this show? Well, very briefly, it's PA Politics. You can't get any more creative than that, or more original than that, I should say. This is a live broadcast. We're live streaming. We're not cutting. We're not going back and forth. And we're bringing you the news of the week from PA Politics, from Harrisburg, from Pittsburgh, from Philadelphia, and all of the places in between, because every single county, all 67 matters, and news happens from all of them. Now, we're bringing this to you from a progressive perspective because if you do not already know this, this is a show that is being brought to you by Arc of Justice Pennsylvania, the home of all things Pennsylvania progressive politics. Just so you're aware, you may listen to some stuff, you may hear some thoughts or opinions that might not necessarily align with your own, and I hope that you're okay with that either way. But to be open, transparent, and honest, it needs to be said up front. This is a progressive, a democratic show. We're going to bring you the news from that perspective, and that's going to be the opinion brought by me, brought by people who may be appearing on the show as well, for the most part. But we value all sorts of opinions and certainly will not shy away from bringing folks on who may think differently, because that is a hallmark of civility, and we need more of that today. So without further ado, we're going to stop the talking, stop the introduction, and go straight to the news of the week with PA Politics Live. What we will do here, if you're watching this, the screen will be shared. We're going to bring you the articles. We're going to bring you the news so that you can see it as I see it. And if you're listening to this, we're going to describe it as best. I'm going to describe it as best as I can so that you're able to follow along just as well. So let's take a look at our first headline of the week, and it's coming from the Pennsylvania Capital Star. And there it is. Perfect. So let's go through what we're looking at with this article. Okay, here we go. Pennsylvania legislative districts. We know the vaccination rates could be better, but we're finally starting to see statistics that really pinpoint where things are going wrong. We're seeing politician names to go along with the district, so we know who is the leader of the pack in these districts that could be doing more, should be doing more. It's your opinion, whatever you think, but we're just going to bring you the statistics and let you make your mind up for yourself. Okay, so we have the legislative districts with the highest and the lowest vaccination rates. Let's scroll down and take a look where we're at. So we're going straight to the breakdown. We're going straight to the map to see the Senate districts with the highest vaccination rates. There they are, right on your screen, okay? We have Allegheny, District 37, with State Senator Devlin Robinson, a Republican. 65.9% of his district is vaccinated, which is fantastic. And I'm not looking at this from a necessarily political perspective. It's just great to know where in the state are we seeing things work and are we seeing things not work. Here's the fact of the matter. Everywhere in Pennsylvania, and here's a map, right? Here's what we're seeing. Darker blue, higher vaccinated rates. We're seeing vaccination rates that are aligning with the political vote. That's just the straight up honest truth. So if it seems like it's coming from a political perspective, it is, because look at the map on your screen, right? You see Pittsburgh dark blue. You see Philadelphia, the suburbs, darker shades. And where do you see the lighter shades? It's the red tea, folks, the red tea of Pennsylvania. Central Pennsylvania, southern Pennsylvania, northern Pennsylvania, we're seeing very, very difficult and staggering numbers in those parts of the state. And now let's scroll up and look at the politicians who are linked with these districts. So we have Devlin Robinson in Allegheny, leading the pack. Nearby in Allegheny is Senator Lindsey Williams, 63%, followed by Katie Muth in Montgomery at 60.2%. Another Democrat, Lisa Bascola, 58.9% in Northampton, and Lehigh at 58.5%. Really, a lot of those swing counties there, which are higher up, and the vaccination rates, which is great to see. But now, this is really what I'm getting at. The lowest vaccination rates across Pennsylvania. Take a look at this. All 5 are from the red T, right? District 30, Judy Ward, Blair, 36%, the lowest in the Commonwealth. Gene Yaw, Chris Dush, Wayne Langerholk, Pat Stefano, okay? And, we're not blasting the people of those counties. I myself am a member of one. But we need to ask ourselves, what are these politicians doing? Or more importantly, what are they not doing that they should be doing? And I want to point out one in particular, District 30. The lowest is Senator Judy Ward at 36%. Now, what's important to note here is that Senator Judy Ward is a registered nurse, right? And most of the time during a public health crisis, it'd be great to be represented by medical professionals, folks who know what they're talking about, people who have been on the front lines and can understand the catastrophic events from something like a global pandemic, right? Senator Judy Ward is a registered nurse. She's been in the hospital. She's been on the front lines, right? Now, Senator Judy Ward, her legislative district is the lowest of the low, the bottom of the barrel, which I think takes us to a good time to show you something else. Ready? Let's pull up a new screen and show you just how unfortunate it is for the people of her district. Here we go. All right, there we go. Sharing the screen right now. You see it on your screen. I see it on my screen. That is State Senator Judy Ward. And it's her own office putting out this press statement saying that she is completely against what she calls vaccine passports. It's vaccine mandates, right? Which is overwhelmingly popular amongst the general public. And she's out here saying that she is against it. And in my opinion, this is what an anti-vax kind of politician looks like. And she's a registered nurse. And there she is. I'm not going to play it. I'm not going to give extra views, but the fact is the fact. She has been outspoken against vaccines. Whether or not she's taken one herself, I don't really care. I'm saying this is somebody who is a leader in the community, who has the resources and who has the name to make a difference, to get out there in the community and boost those vaccine numbers. But instead, she's last in the state. That's not something to be proud of. And quite frankly, it's embarrassing. It's a shame as well. That's the case. But nonetheless, it's what the constituents of her district have to deal with. And hopefully we'll remember come voting time when you see more and more people who are dying in that district, who are hospitalized, the frontline workers, the fellow nurses who are suffering inside those hospitals. They have to ask themselves, are we represented by the best? Are we represented by people who care? And when you're spending your time figuring out ways to, quite frankly, limit the number of people who get vaccinated, that is not caring. And it's really an unethical kind of thing to do as a healthcare professional as well. So that's the way I view it. And you may agree or disagree, but that's why. Go ahead, send in the comments. Let's listen. Let's have a dialogue about this. I think it's one of the most important things that we can do. Which leads me to some more dialogue from city and state PA. They are the folks who are in charge of the biggest winners and losers of the week in Pennsylvania politics, and I'm so grateful that they do this because it gives us a great insight it gives us a pulse about what's going on and who's making inroads and strides and who's might be coming up short in Pennsylvania. So the winners and losers of the week, you see them there on your screen right now. Let's talk about them in depth. Lou Barletta has been named a winner of the week by City and State PA. Why is this? We all know Lou Barletta, right? Former U.S. rep, someone who's wanted to become a statewide office holder in the past, and he's trying again. Lou Barletta, he's back in it. He's back in it to win it, trying to seek the Republican nomination for governor in 2022. And why is he a winner this week? City and State PA says because he is leading a Susquehanna polling research. New survey is out saying that he is on top with a 21-point lead. That's huge over the next closest candidate, which would be State Senator Scott Martin. There's only one problem here, and that is 60% of GOP voters said they're undecided. And there are folks who have not jumped in yet, including State Senators Jake Corman and Doug Mastriano. We know those names. We know the latter's name probably more than the first. Doug Mastriano, Mr. January 6th himself. Somebody who, by all accounts, by all reports, was allegedly there on January 6th at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. as part of the Trump insurrection. And now he thinks he's going to be the next governor. And folks, all I can say right now is it may seem like Lou Barletta got the win of the week, that Lou Barletta is leading in the polls. However, Doug Mastriano is the person to beat in the GOP primary field. Let me just state that for the record. Because Doug Mastriano will be getting the endorsement of Donald Trump, probably Trump Jr., all the Trumps. They're going to be coming to Pennsylvania to campaign for Doug Mastriano. And I will say right here and now, I believe Doug Mastriano is going to be the nominee for the GOP in 2022. I think it's going to be a Trump fest. We'll talk about the other person in just a couple of seconds, who I think is going to be, not only somebody who is going to be the Democratic nominee potentially, but who's going to be the Republican nominee on the U.S. Senate side. We'll talk about him in a couple of seconds. But Lou Barletta, named as a winner of the week for now. So if you're Lou Barletta, my suggestion would be to enjoy this while it lasts, because the Team January 6th, they're coming, and they're going to be supporting the most Trump-like candidate possible, and that's Mastriano. Take a look here. The second winner of the week is John Fetterman. We all know John Fetterman, Pennsylvania's lieutenant governor, U.S. Senate candidates in 2022. With full transparency, of course, I'm a supporter. I've supported John Fetterman in the past. And with that being said, he is really, really crushing the game right now. $2.7 million in contributions in the third quarter of 2021. That's more than his $2.5 million in quarter two. John Fetterman's campaign, there's a lot of folks out there who have been saying, John Fetterman, he's going to start high and he's going to drop, right? He's going to be like an anchor. It's going to just fall any minute. And John Fetterman's going to be done. Here's the deal. John Fetterman is not going anywhere, and he's not going anywhere anytime soon, because he's currently at the top of the pack in the Democratic field of candidates for 2022. I mean, the cash on hand is immense, much more immense than any other candidates. And whether you like it or not, and I think Fetterman would probably be one of the people who says this more than anybody, whether you like it or not, okay? And none of us, speaking for myself, I think it's terrible. The fact of the matter is that the candidate with the most money almost always wins. It's a game, not about politics, not about doing the right thing, not about policies. How much money can you get? How much money can you bring in? That's the tell-all. That's what makes or breaks these campaigns. And right now, John Fetterman has a lot going for him. And it's somebody who I expect to be in it for the long haul. And, we're going to see his name on the ballot next May. There's a lot of candidates who have announced, but there's going to be a difference between the candidates you actually go and see on your ballot next May when you go in and vote. Not everyone will make it. Some will drop out. I suspect that we're going to see some candidates probably jump over into different races. We have that lieutenant governor's race. We see Brian Sims, State Rep Brian Sims, who was announced. He wants to be lieutenant governor. We're going to see more people jump in, and I do believe some of these U.S. Senate candidates will probably end up jumping over into that race as we move along here, as we get closer to 2022, which, folks, is not that far away, right? We're already in October. We're moving right along. So these races are going to start heating up a lot more. Third winner of the week is Andrew Lewis. State Rep Andrew Lewis. He's a Republican from Dauphin County, a combat veteran. He has had 2 bills passed by the House in consecutive weeks. And one was already signed into law. One was about regulatory waivers, trying to extend those. And the other is about requiring schools to post their curriculum materials online. Okay, so it says that one's going to face a tougher challenge to actually make it into law. I don't know all the details about this particular bill. I don't know what Rep. Lewis's intentions are, but something tells me that this could have something to do with the greatest fake outrage topic on the right at this moment, and that is critical race theory. Something might lead me to believe that, let's put all these materials online so that the politicians and the parents can start, deciphering, what might be too historical, what might be too true to tell the kids. Listen, critical race theory is something that's taught in law schools and in university courses. Your second grade child is not being taught a critical race theory course. I can promise that. And I don't even need to look at the curriculum to know that. What we see on the right, it's just a talking point for campaigns. I mean, it's just something that you're going to hear next year on the trail. Critical race, you're going to hear these Republicans saying, you must vote Republican or else your kids are going to be indoctrinated with critical race theory. It's all baloney. None of it's true. Okay? I mean, teaching children about history is a part, it's actually a duty. It's an obligation that we have. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean we don't teach it. I mean, could you imagine if we just didn't teach anything that we thought we didn't like? I mean, listen, nobody likes talking about September 11th. It's a dark day. It's terrible. It's tragic. We lost so many Americans. We teach it. We should be teaching it, right? And the same goes for things like slavery and the founding of the country. It's all total fake outrage, and it's a shame. But congrats to Andrew Lewis, I guess, for being named a winner of the week, nonetheless. Moving down to the 3 losers of the week from city and state PA, it's Allison Beam. She is Governor Wolf's interim Secretary of Health, who took the place of Dr. Rachel Levine. And they say she's a loser because of a new COVID-19 testing program that was rolled out by the state. Schools could enroll in this program, free and optional. The thing is, barely any schools have actually even enrolled. Okay, you see there, 396 out of 5,000 plus have actually opted into the voluntary testing program. And this paper's calling it a loss. Secretary Beam says the state needs to continue educating schools more about the free testing program. Here's the deal, okay? So I'm not blaming. I don't necessarily agree with this. I'm not calling Secretary Beam a loser. Absolutely not. Here's what's going on. Here's who the real losers are, okay? The real losers are the folks who are storming into these school board meetings, who are harassing, who are sending death threats to volunteer school board members and the school administrators. And they're telling them, listen, it's our way or the highway. You're not going to mask our children. You're not going to force our children to get vaxxed. And you're not going to test our children. And if you think about doing that, you're going to pay. That's what these people are telling our fellow Pennsylvanians who are on these boards, who are serving as administrators. It's ludicrous. It's scary. And there are school board members across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania who have or are seriously considering resigning from their posts because of the death threats. Because this volunteer job has turned into something so much more. It's turned into a political hijacking from the far right. And unfortunately, I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. So, I mean, can you blame these individuals for not opting into this voluntary testing program? If you make something voluntary, then suddenly you're putting targets on the backs of these school board members and these school administrators. So I think from the start, obviously we should be testing. That's how you're going from the start. That's how we would have beaten this thing earlier on. Testing is absolutely needed. But I don't blame Governor Wolf. I don't blame Allison Beam for any of that. It's the people who are really putting the good people into harm's way. And that's all I can say about that. It's a true shame that they have to deal with that. Second loser of the week is Kelsey Warren. Kelsey Warren is executive chairman of the Energy Transfer Partners. Okay, why do we know that name? It's a Texas-based pipeline company. They're in charge of a natural gas pipeline project in Pennsylvania. So we know the name because just this week's Attorney General Josh Shapiro levied this company with 48 environmental crimes. A grand jury said that there were frequent drilling fluid spills into lakes, waterways, and residential properties since 2017. So Kelsey Warren, yeah, you're definitely probably the biggest loser of the week. I think we're able to vote up top here on this poll, which I'll do in a second. Kelsey Ward has my vote for that. I'll tell you that right now. And props to Attorney General Josh Shapiro and his team for the prosecuting of this company and hopefully bringing justice to an incredibly horrible situation. Our last loser of the week is Sean Parnell. Sean Parnell is a Republican U.S. Senate candidate. And, I don't like to get into these personal issues, but the fact is it's a public figure and it's news. Sean Parnell has been dogged by controversy since his wife started to, a rival campaign has started to release information about protection from abuse orders that were sought by Parnell's wife. Okay, and this is a sensitive topic. As a victim advocate, you don't want to go into things too deep into details, especially on a public forum like this. But all I'll say is Parnell's seeking a gag order against his wife and her attorney because of this information that's been brought to light amid his U.S. Senate campaign launch. So Sean Parnell being listed as a loser of the week. It says not a good look, Sean. I think we can probably all agree with that. So speaking of Pennsylvania politicians who are in the news and who are trying to make a name for themselves in the 2022 race, there was a very interesting article that came out, and I'm going to pull it up right here, right now. It's actually a Vanity Fair article coming on your screen. There it is. Basically saying that the Democrats' last best hope to keep control of Congress may be none other than Pittsburgh's own Connor Lamb, U.S. Representative from Pittsburgh. So let's take a look at what it's saying here real quickly. So Ken Stern, the author from Vanity Fair, is saying that progressivism should be on its way out, and the Democratic Party is starting to bet on moderate candidates in the swing states, in PA, in Ohio, and in Wisconsin. Let's take a look a little closer. It's saying that Connor Lamb visited Potter County. We know Potter County, 97% white, 80% of the vote went to Donald Trump in 2020. And funny enough, actually, it says here in the article, on the walls of the Democratic Party headquarters in Potter County, there's a sign that reads, "Vote Democratic. No one has to know." Which, in a place like Potter County, and all these counties here in central Pennsylvania, in rural Pennsylvania, that's such a common theme. And in 2020, I think a lot of folks did actually take that advice. They weren't outspoken for Joe Biden. They weren't on Facebook posting all these articles for him or in Facebook groups, but they still voted for Biden. They may have even told their friends, yeah, I'm a Republican, etc., etc. And then they go in the voting booth, and nobody knows who you vote for at that point. So I think that's pretty cool, and hopefully we can stop up to Potter County sometime and take a look at that for ourselves. But the article says that someone like Connor Lamb is really painting himself as the moderate of this race. And listen, it is a race. The 2022 Democratic Senate race is there's a lot of progressives who are running. You have John Fetterman leading the pack. You have moderate turn progressive Malcolm Kenyatta, who's in there as well, among others, Val Arkush. But Connor Lamb is trying to, make himself be the only moderate option in 2022. And the article basically is just highlighting that fact and talking about a couple of different candidates in, like Tim Ryan, you see there, Mandela Barnes, Lieutenant Governor of Wisconsin. So, listen, it's the same thing throughout, but what it's trying to argue is that progressivism is burning out. And I think ever since Bernie Sanders lost to Joe Biden in the 2020 Democratic primary, it's something that has been talked about, and rightfully so. Is it? And then you have New York City, right? New York City, Eric Adams, he's the moderate. He won the primary. So is that something that we should be looking to in 2022 for someone like a moderate and Connor Lamb to be the one to become the nominee? And I think, number one, too early to tell, right? We don't know who the nominee is going to be. But there are, from all indications, the progressive of the race, John Fetterman, is somebody who is the front runner. And until Connor Lamb jumps him, until we start seeing signs or indications that that's not the case, we have to assume that the progressive movement is alive and well in Pennsylvania. And we know when the voters decide, when the voters speak up, that's when we'll know the true answer. But what's interesting in this article, it talks about Connor Lamb visiting these rural counties, visiting central Pennsylvania counties, and almost trying to make a link between Democratic voters in those rural counties as being automatically moderate, just because they're inside this red T, because they're represented by all these Republicans. And to that I say not so fast. Not so fast. Because in 2016, when Pennsylvania was still able to vote, attempting to make a difference in the 2016 primary between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, what did we see that year? What we saw was central Pennsylvania, rural Pennsylvania counties went heavily for Bernie Sanders. You can go up and you can look up the map from that year and see Bernie Sanders made a lot of headway in places that are traditionally very conservative territories. Because you have to remember, it's not the conservatives who they are going after to get the vote. It's the Democrats. They're not all moderate Democrats. I think many people would be surprised to learn just how progressive central Pennsylvania Democrats are. Rural Pennsylvania Democrats are. The northern, Tioga and Warren and places like that, counties. You have progressives everywhere. And just because they may be represented by certain people doesn't mean that progressives are all lost. So, this time next year, we're going to have a ton of data. Really not this time next year. This time in May, we're going to have a ton of data, and it's going to be very fun to go through to determine, to get a pulse really on who the Democrats are liking in the midterms between Fetterman, Lamb, and many others. So I just thought that was an article that was interesting and, potentially shed some insight on how these candidates are thinking, how these candidates teams are thinking. So this, moving on, this next article is something that I find pretty darn fascinating. And I think some old school Pennsylvania politics people are going to like this a lot, maybe, or at least find entertaining. And it's Mike Stack. There you go, Mike Stack, he's back. And he's back in Pennsylvania. All right, Mike Stack is the former lieutenant governor under Tom Wolf. As you may know, after he lost to John Fetterman in 2018, he decided to leave the Commonwealth and actually went to California. And he attempted a stand-up comedy career as well as an acting career. And he became known as Mikey Stacks. That was his stage name on the comedian circuit. So this article from the Philadelphia Inquirer is saying Mike Stack's back, and he's trying to get back into Pennsylvania politics. Now, in case you do not remember, Mike Stack and his wife became embroiled into some controversy over the treatment of some staff at their home down there in southeastern Harrisburg area in Pennsylvania. Mistreatment, so on and so forth. And that's ultimately why he lost in 2018. I believe the first incumbent lieutenant governor to not actually get past a primary for re-election. So what's this article saying? It's saying that Mike Stack is trying to remake him. He was trying to remake himself from Democratic politician to entertainer. It says he was on a real estate show called Find Me a Luxury Home. It came out in August, I guess. I have no interest in watching that. But let's take a look here. So Mike Stack's old state Senate seat, he held it for 14 years. It's the 5th district seat in southeastern Pennsylvania, and it's going to be vacant in January, probably. Mike Stack is starting to make the rounds, saying that he wants to get that seat back. However, there's some company there. There's some competition. So what happened is State Senator John Sabatini Jr., he basically he's a state senator for that district, but he's being called up, so to speak, into this magical judicial seat where he's going to be able to become a judge on the bench for a 10-year term. So Mike Stack is thinking that he's going to be able to get in that during a special election, but there's a twist. State Senator John Sabatini's father, Sabatini Sr., he's an attorney, he's also a notable Democrat in Philly. He says he's going to run. He wants to take his son's seat. And what the Philadelphia Inquirer says is interesting is that the Sabatinas and Stack, those two camps have long been allies in Philadelphia politics. So that is, I think, something interesting to keep an eye on. Mikey Stacks is back, and he wants to get back into things. So I thought it would be interesting to maybe take a look real quick for those who are watching at Mike Stack's acting career. So we're going to play the soundbite for you watching the video and for you listening on a podcast. Listen in. Mike Stack is on the right. Let's watch it.
So really, it's the perfect situation. They had no choice but to sell. So we'll step in, take it over, make it ours before the quarter ends. I'm telling you, Bill, they're getting desperate to sell. So it's going to be low risk with a chance to maximize profits.
I know, Jackson, but I just hate hostile takeovers. They're so
hostile.
I gotta feel bad for the team at that company.
All right, let's take Mikey Stacks off the screen there. So that was Mike Stack as an actor, and he, tried to make a name for himself in the Los Angeles entertainment industry, and props to him for doing so. But he's back, and he's trying to get back into things. So we'll see how that goes. That's a developing story. So stay tuned for more on that. A couple more news bits here, which are particularly interesting. Let's pull this one up. PA's prison population falls to the lowest point in 20 years. Okay, so this is promising news. And it's promising because incarceration is something that we need to start reversing the incarcerated rate. The United States is known for having the highest incarcerated rate. It's just immoral to have people locked up for nonviolent crimes for their entire lives. And this article from Penn Live says the prisons are getting less crowded in Pennsylvania. Governor Wolf's administration announced on Thursday that the population dropped to its lowest level since 2001. A lot of this is because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Advocacy groups, Pennsylvania Prison Society, they have implored corrections departments to release these nonviolent offenders as they should, and it seems to be working out. Because at the end of the day, these are individuals who were not sentenced to death, right? But they are dying in prison because of COVID-19, because of illnesses that are threatening their lives. They are vulnerable, susceptible people in very, very close environments in prison, and they're getting ill. And this should be a bipartisan effort, and it should be, I think, pushed a lot by the right, because this is also a pro-life issue. Getting these individuals, nonviolent offenders, we don't want them to die in prison. They shouldn't be in prison for their entire lives. They should be out being rehabilitated. That's where they should be. Mass incarceration needs to end. And Governor Wolf's administration, as we see here, is doing a pretty good job at it. So props to those involved, props to the advocacy groups who are pushing for that to happen. It's extremely important, and it's worth the fight. We have ourselves some interesting news from the Western Pennsylvania political sphere, and that's going to be pulled up here right now, if I can find it. There it is. Let's see, we have Pittsburgh's WPXI with a big article that just came out this past week, and it's a state representative, Summer Lee, who is presumably going to challenge Congressman Mike Doyle in the 2022 Democratic primary. This is big, big news. Summer Lee is a self-described, according to her Twitter bio, self-described Democratic socialist. She's a lawyer, and she's been really rising on the scene. She's from Braddock, Pennsylvania, and many sources are saying that Summer Lee is going to go after Mike Doyle in 2022. So stay tuned for more information on that, and we'll see what happens. It's going to be a very, very interesting race with Mike Doyle, who would be the incumbent, and Summer Lee trying to almost be sort of that AOC, grassroots organizing type that ends up rising and taking down the big incumbent politician. On to news from Allentown. Jill Biden, First Lady Jill Biden, Dr. Jill Biden is coming to Allentown next week. It's going to be on Wednesday. Location, time, and place to be announced. However, it's part of this tour she's taking through Kansas City and Chicago, and she's coming to Pennsylvania. And it's really all about the country's recovery from COVID-19 and probably the Build Back Better campaign and trying to get the word out about that. Rep. Susan Wild will be there with her Joe Biden, of course, it says, grew up in Willow Grove, and spokesperson Michael LaRosa is an Easton area high school alumnus. So a little bit of like a homecoming for Joe Biden, which is certainly something that I think everyone can be excited about. Okay, moving on. A very interesting site in Harrisburg. It's very important that we shed light on this. Very interesting site in Harrisburg just this past week. We have Breast Cancer Awareness Month kicking off. The PA Capitol Fountain, take a look at those pictures if you can see them on your screen. PA Capitol Fountain was made pink, and free pink milkshakes. That sounds pretty good. How about it? We're giving out to the crowds. Breast Cancer Awareness Month. It's something that we all should be talking more about. The importance of mammograms, this article from Penn Live says, it's everything in terms of early detection and fighting breast cancer. So it really is a symbol of hope. That's what the organizers wanted to be, a symbol of hope for breast cancer fighters, for survivors. And the Pennsylvania Breast Cancer Coalition, you can find them at pabreastcancer.org, right there on your screen. They were a big part of this, as well as the PA Dairymen's Association, who provided the pink strawberry flavored milkshakes for free. So congrats to them for doing that. And if you are watching this, it is important to talk to those in your life. Maybe it's yourself, about getting screened, because early detection, it saves lives. And that's not something that's just some slogan or some trademarked thing. It literally saves lives. So whatever we can do to help spread the word on that, we will absolutely do. So shifting from that topic to one that is getting back to a little bit more political as we wrap things up here on the show today. And this one is very, very interesting, because we have ourselves a Republican state senator coming out and saying it's time. It's time to legalize recreational marijuana in Pennsylvania. On your screen, Senator Mike Regan. He has been outspoken. He's a former U.S. Marshal. He's a Republican. He fought against drugs his entire life, and now he's saying marijuana should be legalized. He says it's inevitable. It's the common sense thing to do. And he also says it's an economic thing, because we're losing all this money to our neighboring states who are starting to legalize it. So we know Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman has been a big proponent. It's part of his Senate agenda, is legalizing marijuana. Governor Tom Wolf has also come around to becoming a major advocate for it as well. Because number one, end mass incarceration. Number two, let's provide Pennsylvanians with an economic benefit through this means. And it's starting to become a bipartisan thing in Harrisburg. We see there Dan Laughlin, Republican Erie, Sharif Street, Democrat Philadelphia. They actually are teamed up with the first bipartisan-backed marijuana legalization bill earlier this year. And we see a lot of other folks who are jumping on board as well. Now it's time to get the leadership on board. We see Jake Corman, Center County, Kim Ward, Westmoreland County, both Republicans. They're not commenting on the bill, because for some reason there's still this taboo that marijuana is something that is going to wreak havoc and destruction. And listen, we don't see that happening in other places across the country, across the globe. So the fact that it would somehow spark this catastrophe in Pennsylvania, it's just not right. It's all political talking points from the right, from folks who don't want to see this happen. So Reagan says his priorities for the revenue from marijuana would be to support law enforcement, to fight gun violence, and to provide after-school programs for youth in disadvantaged neighborhoods. And right there, I think that's kind of how you would get Republicans on board, because those are all those are all topics that are Republican and conservative friendly, and you can't find many topics that actually do that today. So we'll cover that, and we'll see how that shapes up as the months and years go on. So we have, it looks like 2 more articles here today, and one is, it's really been making the news a lot lately, as of, well, really because of Texas and what's happened down there in Texas. And I'm going to pull this up right now. Okay, there it is. We have abortion rights activists and supporters in Harrisburg rallying to protect Roe versus Wade. It was part of a coordinated day of rallies across the state and the nation on October the 2nd. And folks came out from all over. We had Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro who spoke. We had many other Democratic politicians. Governor Wolf was a big advocate and supporter of them. There were marches in Harrisburg. Look at some of those pictures there. Marches in Philadelphia. Take a look at that stage. A lot of people with their signs and marching. My body, my choice. Let's take a look down at Pittsburgh. Look at this sign. We have to stop for a minute. Laura Lee posted this. I'm not sure if that is actually Laura Lee, but posted this saying, Greg Abbott is not my OBGYN. That's a beautiful sign. And it's particularly true because a choice between a woman and her doctor should not include Greg Abbott or any politician for that matter. It makes no sense. So take a look at more pictures. Scranton had a little rally as well. And by all accounts, it was a great success. So congratulations to all of those coordinators and supporters who were involved in that. Because what we need to understand, what everyone needs to understand, is the fact that abortions are not going to end. You know, judges, politicians in Texas, politicians anywhere, they can claim that they're going to end it once and for all, that abortions are going to be completely done away with. But here's the truth. They're not. They'll never end. And creating barriers and blockades to safe and accessible abortions, what does that do? You're putting lives at risk. You're putting women at risk unnecessarily, needlessly. We're not going backwards. We're not regressing to generations gone by. We're in 2021, and it's time to continue to stand up and support and defend that right. And what happens in the doctor's office should not be impeded on by a politician, by any man, by any person other than the two people who are in that room. That's the takeaway from that activist movement that occurred this last week. So, one more article here. It's about Pennsylvania midterms, and it's how these midterms are going to be a referendum on Donald Trump than on Joe Biden. More of a referendum. Usually what happens in midterms after an election of a president, voters go out and they say whether or not we stand by the president's party or we don't. This article written by Julian Routh of the Post-Gazette says otherwise. It says it's actually about Donald Trump still. This guy cannot get out of the news. He can't get out of the headlines. So it's saying that essentially it's saying is people are going out to the polls next year and they're going to be choosing between candidates. And the candidates, generally speaking, on the right, on the Republican side, they're going to be the Trump candidates. They're going to be endorsed by Trump. I'll tell you right now, Doug Mastriano for governor, Sean Parnell for U.S. Senate. I'm calling that now. They're the Trump candidates. They're mostly aligned with Trump and they have his supporters. So when people go to the polls next November 2022, they go out to vote in the general election, they're going to be deciding whether they want to continue with the ways of Trump, with his candidates, or move onward and forward with sane Democratic candidates. That's a story for another day that we'll talk about more. But it's very important to say right off the bat that I think the Post-Gazette is right here. We're going to really see whether or not, because listen, Donald Trump's running in 2024. We know that he's going to be the Republican nominee. He's going to be on your ballot November of 2024. That's just the way it is. Notwithstanding something happening. But beside the point, Donald Trump versus Joe Biden 2024. As of now, that's what it will be. So 2022, we're going to get a pulse for what the voters are thinking across the entire nation. And we're going to see once and for all whether or not the voters are moving past Trump. We're putting him in the past, the dark days under which he led us, or are we going to go back to him? And it's something that may sound scary to you listening right now. The fact that Donald Trump is going to be back, he's going to be back on the ticket. But in my mind, it should motivate. It should motivate all of us to stand up, to get out, to raise our voices, to not stop organizing just because it's not a presidential election year, but to organize from start to finish. Because we know that someday we're going to have to take on Donald Trump himself again. That day will come a couple of years from now. But for now, it's about putting people in the position to help President Biden, who is the current president, elected duly and fairly, and get that agenda through, get it passed, make the world a little bit, make the country, I guess in the world too, a more peaceful, prosperous place, a more just and equitable place for all people. That's the goal right now. That's how it should be. We'll talk about Trump a later time and day. But for now, that's all there is to it. I'm Jordan Roan. You've been watching PA Politics Live right here on the Jordan Roan Show, presented by Arc of Justice, Pennsylvania. Please go ahead and subscribe to this YouTube channel. It will help us to continue making this content to help us reach more people. And if you're listening on a podcast, please go ahead and press that follow button and subscribe to the podcast. It will be immensely beneficial as well. Follow on Facebook at Arc of Justice PA, Twitter Arc of Justice PA, Instagram Arc of Justice PA. Not on TikTok yet, but maybe someday we'll get there too. I'm Jordan Roan. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching today's first ever show and the PA Politics Live segment. I hope it's been beneficial, and I hope you feel a little bit more up to date and in tune with what is going on across the Commonwealth. Until next week, I'm Jordan Roan. Have a wonderful weekend, and take care, everybody. Bye-bye.